Yeah, so as Pete said, I'm Kevin Barton, Managing Director of Robert Bray Associates. We're a firm of about 10 now, I think, landscape architects that specialize in managing rainwater creatively in the landscape, or SUDS as it's commonly known, water-sensitive urban design, sponge cities, whatever. But yeah, we think of it as creative rainwater management. Just get this sharing happening. Hopefully you can all see that okay. Yeah, we've been doing this since the mid-90s with yeah, sort of over 100 schemes under our belt. We've done actually a lot of retrofit as well as new builds, so we've got a lot of experience retrofitting all sorts of SUDs in. I think we'll sort of touch on the breadth of retrofit SUDs and how it's not just about rain gardens. So firstly, SUDS is a big topic, rain gardens is a big topic, and actually there are two distinct different types of rain gardens. I think it's important that I make that distinction straight off the bat. What I'm talking about today is not this, it's not the original conventional rain garden, which is for managing less polluted roof and pavement runoff. These are simple depressions in the ground, planted depressions in the ground. There's no drainage layers underneath the soils. We don't need anything like that. This is relatively clean water, only needs a modest amount of pollution treatment, and we can just store above the soil surface. So they're quite untechnical SUDS features. I'm not talking about that today. I'm talking about what is commonly called, just referred to simply kind of generically as rain gardens, but actually more accurately would be termed bioretention rain gardens or highway rain gardens, which are dealing with the more polluted highway runoff. And it's actually quite a different device, if you like, and comes with its own set of issues and considerations. So not talking about conventional rain gardens today, I'm talking specifically about bioretention rain gardens. And we do a masterclass on bioretention rain gardens. That is a whole day. So there's only so much I can cover in 20 minutes. Hopefully I managed to stick to that. It is quite, yeah, bioretention rain gardens is quite a big subject. We actually struggle to fit that into a day. We could easily do it over 2 days and it wouldn't be, padded out. So I'll cover what I can today. And we're going to look at the fact that they're just one option to us for SUDS retrofit in urban environments. And it's important that we understand the wide range. And so we know why we're choosing bioretention. And that's the appropriate SUDS solution for the location. Looking at the fact that it's actually a decades-old idea, not particularly in the UK, but actually it's been going on in other places, particularly Portland, Oregon, since the 80s and 90s, and there's lots of learning we can get from them and continue to get from them. How really I believe that it's important that we consider these things as they are an art first, they are design first, with engineering. I think it's a really important consideration, because that helps then with these sort of next points, the idea that public perception should be a #1 priority. And to get successful public perception, we need to get the basics right, and we need to look after them and nurture them for life, not just fit and forget. So I'm going to try and cover all of those best I can, and obviously there'll be time for questions after. So yeah, SUDS is quite a broad topic, and there's lots of options in our armory within the urban environments, both new build and retrofit. We've got blue-green roofs, permeable paving, swales, filter strips, basins, conventional rain gardens, bioretention rain gardens. Have I mentioned ponds and wetlands? SUDS tree pits, yeah. Anyway, there's a whole range of them, and within the urban environment, even with retrofit, they all have their place. They're all a potential option on the table, and we should be thinking about that whole range, because actually, bioretention is one of the more complex and costly and carbon-intensive SUDS solutions. Here's an example of a project where the ambition was effectively some permeable paving on what was a busy, polluted highway, dangerous route to school. This is a school on the left. And that used to be a road through there with parked cars and people parking very close to school entrance. The original project ambition was maybe a couple of bioretention rain gardens and permeable paving. Actually, through the engagement with the community and exploring the site and analyzing the kind of landscape and the context, we actually realized there was a much bigger opportunity to create what we did here, a SUDS park. And so we've got a much broader range of then SUDS solutions here. So yes, all the kind of the block paving is permeable paving. We've got then these large planted basins, which are play basins with a wiggly wall and play planting in. We've got conventional rain gardens here managing the roof runoff via a rain sculpture. So we've got a kind of range of SUDS features in here where we could have just come in and put a line of bioretention along the street. But actually in this scenario, a lot of other opportunities presented themselves. Similarly, this is a high road, very busy road in Wood Green. We could have put bioretention on the street there, but that would have been costly, would have achieved modest gains in terms of flood mitigation and maybe sort of benefits to the community at quite a cost and quite an impact on the kind of road and disruption. Whereas right next to that busy road, we had a park which was conveniently sloping away from the road, so we're able to get that water across the pavement and into the landscape, into features that don't need under draining. We haven't got gravel drainage layers below them, so we've got good, healthy contact between topsoils and subsoils to keep that planting alive through drought summers. And we have the only opportunity to enhance a park and achieve much more for our money in an adjacent green space than if we'd try to squeeze bioretention rain gardens on that busy road. Similarly, another really cheap solution, huge volumes taken out to protect from flooding, as well as treating that water before it discharges into the aquifer, the chalk aquifer beneath. Basically a meadow basin managing that runoff in what was an existing green space with some no dig basins underneath these existing trees. Much cheaper and much more volume and benefits the local community than if we'd put some bioretention rain gardens in. And the reason I say that is not to dissuade people from using bioretention. It's just there are other things available, and sometimes there are much more obvious and cost beneficial and multi-beneficial opportunities available. And it's partly because pretty much second to this, which is a pair of SUDS tree pits, this is probably the kind of most complex and most fraught with maintenance issues. This and kind of bioretention, they're the most difficult and arguably the most carbon intensive SUD solutions. So we're careful when we deploy them. We understand why we're deploying them, whether that's because there just aren't the other opportunities, or in this case, the council just weren't open to there being open planting. It had to be fully a hard paved environment in this very busy high street. And so the only SUD solution left was SUDS tree pits. And so you're making those decisions consciously. We're choosing SUDS tree pits because that is the only solution given all the parameters. And it's the same with bioretention. We're very careful when we use them because there is a lot of concrete involved. They're quite complex to design right, to build right, and to keep to maintain and keep functioning. So we do need to carefully consider when we're using them. They still feel relatively new in the UK, and definitely people are still sort of finding their feet. They're still experimenting, they're still making mistakes and learning from it. I think that it is a little bit frustrating for us because we know that in Portland they've been doing it for decades and they've made all those mistakes and that learning literally decades ago in the 80s and 90s. And there's a lot we can learn. The climate's very similar, the urban environments are very similar. One of the benefits they have is that they cast their curbs, and so they can do a lot more with curb inlets and things like that because they cast all their curbs. But that aside, there's a lot to learn from Portland. Here we see some sort of classic examples. These could have been right up against the highway. They've chosen to kind of create a bit of a strip for people to be getting out of their cars. So there's a kind of little channel connection between the highway and the rain garden. But we can see there the soil level is dropped down sufficient for water to get off the highway and spread over that soil. We've got relatively conventional planting in there, evergreen shrubs, ornamental grasses. yeah, there's some things to learn here. They're using relatively conventional soils, relatively conventional planting. They've got good inlets, soil levels are good, space for water, all looking good. Again, sort of herbaceous planting, some fairly conventional sort of landscape planting and fairly conventional landscape maintenance going on there. And they are actually, let's step back aside, they're also adapting things as climate change takes hold. They're starting to notice changes in the ability of these things to cope with drought summers, much like we are in the UK, and they're actually changing their practices, and they're sort of doing some of the same things that we've actually started evolving in our work in the UK to tackle drought resilience and climate change. And they're adapting their soil mixes, and they're also, as we are actually now with our rain gardens, trying to do away with blanket under drains with these gravel drainage layers underneath the soil, trying to minimize that as much as possible or take them out altogether, and have topsoil, subsoil, surface contact to be able to draw on the kind of the native subsoil moisture through the summer. So yeah, we can continue to learn from them and their experience. And I talked about the idea of it being art first, and for us, this is very much our approach. We see, yeah, talking about bioretention rain gardens, we see bioretention rain gardens or all of our SUDS work as really being landscape design first and foremost, and it has a really important component, which is the engineering, but we very much approach it as art first, as placemaking. And we feel this is really important and not that unusual, actually. We think about many things in our lives, whether that's buildings. The engineering of a building is hugely important, but it is led by architects. It is led by the art of designing buildings. Product design is a design discipline, an art discipline. Even vehicle design. The engineering is very, very important, but it's a design-led process. And for us, yeah, SUDS and bioretention rain gardens, we approach it in the same way. So we are operating as landscape architects, designing a space that responds to the needs of the local community, their need for health and well-being benefits, air quality benefits, safety in the street, civic pride, play on the way, all these sort of benefits that landscapes and green infrastructure can bring in urban environments anyway. That's what we're trying to deliver through these schemes, but we add in then the extra engineering functionality and the extra rigor that's still really important of managing rain within those designed landscapes. So it's not something we consider separately. We don't think of the SUDS separately. It's all part of, it's just another engineering ingredient within our wider landscape design. And the same we believe should be the case for bioretention rain garden design as well. And partly that's because, again, my belief is that no matter what your project priority, no matter what your functional priority of delivering rain gardens is, whether that's about water quality, whether it's about taking water out, volume and rate of flow out of sewers to reduce combined sewer overflow events, whether it is to create biodiversity benefits, public perception, the design for amenity value should be our #1 priority, because without that, we threaten the delivery of the other objectives of SUDS. If people don't like them, then we will struggle to deliver all the other functions that SUDS can deliver. So this project in Camley Street, we've got a few shots of people walking through here. What are the public thinking as they walk through this street? They're probably just thinking, this is nice. This feels like quite generous, a nice, beautiful public realm for me to walk along what was a horrible, dirty street and very close to the sort of quite fast-moving vehicles next to me. Now I've got an attractive street to walk down. I maybe feel a bit safer now browsing my mobile phone as I'm walking through here, because I feel like there's a barrier between me and those vehicles. Maybe I'm appreciating the fennel and the wonderful planting. This guy certainly is. He's kind of looking down. Is he seeing a rain garden? Probably not. Probably not. We do all we can in our schemes to make that sort of rainwater visible, and try and give a little hints and visual cues to that these things are doing something different. But actually, by and large, most people will walk through a well-designed SUD scheme and not actually realize it's managing rainwater. They will just see a nice piece of landscape planting. They might notice the butterflies and the bees. That's their experience. That's their perception of these spaces, is the quality of the public realm, the experience they have walking through it. Noticing that we've got some beautiful pink geraniums on one side, which mirror the pink t-shirt of the woman walking to the left of me, or whatever he's thinking, but he's definitely looking down at those geraniums. These parents are, walking along here, and they may be thinking, this feels so much less polluted, feels so much safer to walk down here with my child in a pushchair than it used to. And yeah, maybe how lovely that my child gets to see these butterflies and bees on the way back from King's Cross Station back home. But these are their experiences, not about rain gardens. On the other side, on the highway, this woman on her bike, clearly thinks she's in Holland because she's got this beautiful public realm next to her, and so she's riding one-handed. She should have a piece of healthy fruit. I tend to find all Dutch cycle with a banana or an apple in the other hand. So her experience, she's maybe got some more visual cues there, that these kind of strange curb openings, but probably she's totally unaware of that. She's just seeing this nice landscape as she's cycling along this street. What a different experience that was to how that street used to be. I'm not going to labor this too much, or dig into this too much, but we can see the risks of projects if they don't deliver in those ways, if they don't deliver on the public perception, these benefits to people, then they can start, we might not be able to get phase B, phase 2 happening, because, or even if it makes the national press, even people in other towns and cities might have seen these examples, and it makes it harder for us to engage with shop owners and local communities about delivering these things. We really, really need to be getting all of these projects right, so that we're in a virtuous cycle of convincing the public that these are a good thing. Again, don't want to sort of dig into this too much, but there are kind of a number of issues with the design of these rain gardens, which actually, even ignoring the fact that these have a SUDS functionality, just if these were green infrastructure, just think of them as green infrastructure. It was kind of inevitable, really, with things like flush curbs outside of a busy high street with lots of convenience shops, that these were going to get driven on, and kind of planting was going to fail. So we can't afford, we really can't afford, not only just economically, but in terms of for SUDS functionality, if we want, even if these still function hydraulically, we need to deliver this at scale. We need to be rolling this out everywhere, and we need the public perception to be as positive as possible. Because even if our only target is about volumes, if we can't get these in everywhere we go and talk to communities about putting them in, if we get that resistance and people don't want them, then we're not achieving our bigger targets of taking water out of the combined sewer, or improving water quality, or creating biodiverse, climate resilient cities for people and wildlife. So to do that, we've got to get the basics right. And sort of main considerations we're going to look at today are the inlets, how you get water into these things, the silt collection, which is probably the biggest threat to bioretention rain gardens, the biggest issue they have to deal with. And partly this is the nature of bioretention rain gardens being a kind of vertical management train, whereas most SUDS, we go from one SUDS feature to another, from a filter drain into a swale, into a basin, into a wetland. When we design SUDS in new build where we've got space, we go through a treatment train. We sort of work on the horizontal as water travels through the landscape. With bioretention, because we're in a tight urban space and we have to kind of minimize our footprint, to get sufficient treatment of that polluted water, we have to travel vertically through the rain garden. So our management train is kind of in layers through the rain garden, stored at the surface, filtered and bioremediated as it goes through soil layers, and then picked up in drainage layers at the bottom and taken away. And so the silt management can impact the ability for that water to actually pass through the system effectively. So silt collection and then kind of protection from erosion at our inlets is a really important consideration. Space for water is also something that's often missing in a lot of schemes. You've got to provide enough space for water, not only within the whole profile, but particularly above the soil to give it time and space to soak through those soils. The soils themselves, they need to work, not just hydraulic conductivity. The soil shouldn't be considered as an engineering substrate. It's not. It's a living system. It's part of the ecosystem that is a bioretention rain garden. Plants, soils, biofilm, invertebrates, they all work together as an ecosystem to make a successful bioretention rain garden. It's a living system. It's not just something you test in a lab, put it in the ground, and it stays like that. It will not, partly because of the silt, partly just time, and then the action of water and silt over time. So we need to get soils that work in order that we can grow the plants that we want to grow, to create the delight, to create the art of the public realm that gives it the positive public perception. And then we'll look at flow controls and overflows. Again, overflows, particularly something that we see a lot of bioretention rain gardens getting wrong. So yeah, we'll just go through a few slides, looking at those. We worked with Sheffield on the Sheffield Grey to Green phase 1. What's interesting here in terms of inlet is actually on our SUDS, we're always starting with the principle of we want sheet flow if we can get it. So here at Sheffield Grey to Green, we're able to get sheet flow off the highway because it's a fairly controlled highway. It's mainly buses and taxis. Most of the traffic is on the outer ring road. And so we were able to get sheet flow into what's like quite an expansive rain garden. Most of the time, that's just not possible. Well, in fact, to be honest, that's the only situation where we've done bioretention, where we worked on bioretention rain gardens, where we've been able to get sheet flow. Most of the time, whether it's residential like this, we've got houses behind me taking the photo here, residential street or a shopping street, normally you've got pressure of car parking. And also just vehicles, tightness of streets and things like this. Yeah, upstand curb, vast majority of cases, in our minds, is the appropriate solution. In which case, we want to get as close to that sheet flow as possible, so multiple inlets to allow water into that rain garden. Again, multiple inlets into the rain garden at Camley Street, slightly different solution. And then that runoff coming off that highway is carrying silts, that polluted silt, hydrocarbons, heavy metals in there, organic silt, inorganic silt, all sorts of microplastics, all sorts of stuff coming off that highway, and we need to collect it. So you can see there we've got this curb inlet, drops off the highway, and there's a drop down then onto an erosion and silt collection pad. That drop down is really critical, so it's not flush, it drops onto it. That really reduces the force of the water falling off the road, takes the erosive forces out of it. So you can see the amount of silt that then is collected. That is just a flat slab. It's not textured, it's not pimpled, it's not all kind of up and down to try and trap silt and slow water down. It's a kind of nice idea, but if you've got silt collecting lots of nooks and crannies, how do you get it out? You can't get it out. It sits there, it sets, and then everything just bypasses it. So there's a compromise. It's a flat slab, but it's very easy just to shovel off that silt. So you can see it accumulating there. We've got a depth, but still where it can still accumulate before it inhibits the flow of water off. Some will end up on the rain garden. You can remove that by hand or by spade over time. So that silt management is really critical because you're trying to protect the rest of the soil from blinding. So no matter how free draining that soil is, no matter how much gravel, grit, or whatever else you throw at it, sand, that silt can start filling up all the pore spaces and reducing the hydraulic conductivity. And then the other thing really, really critical, which you see missing on a lot of schemes, is sufficient space to store water over the soil. Just because soil in a lab has a high hydraulic conductivity, you can't necessarily guarantee that. And in really intense rainfall events, you've got to have sufficient space to store that water over the soil whilst it's soaking down through the soil, because a lot of water can come off that road in a very short period of time. You want to catch it and give it time to soak through the soils. So here we can see about 100 mil, at least in this case, 100 mil level change between the soil level and the highway. So we have space over the soil. Quite often you see those soils really close to highway level, sometimes even above the highway level. So the water literally can't even get into the rain garden. It just puddles a little bit and then carries on down the road. You've got to have sufficient space over the soil for that water to be stored. Intense rainfall events. You've got to think about those rainfall events where water's cascading down a street, skipping over gullies. How's that going to be managed in a rain garden? Not just very gentle day-to-day rainfall. You've got to be able to catch those short, intense rainfall events as well. Here's looking on the other side of that scheme in Dublin. We have sheet flow off the footway here. So we've got a flush curb, sheet flow into the rain garden. That's appropriate. On this side, we've got no vehicles. And you can see actually this is a fairly steeply sloping street. So we've introduced weirs so that actually this rain garden terraces down so we can store water over the whole of the soil surface all the way down, even though we're on a slope, by putting these little weirs across. And here you can see we've got fairly conventional soil. So we typically, Sheffield Greater Green is quite unusual. It's a very low nutrient, kind of aggregate-based growing medium. And that's a very particular planting type with a very particular type of maintenance, skilled maintenance staff about 4 times a year, horticultural level maintenance to keep that alive. Most of our schemes, we tend to use fairly conventional sandy loam topsoils with about 30% organic matter. We don't throw lots of sand and grit at it. It allows us to grow then evergreen shrubs for air quality benefits, herbaceous and ornamental grasses and evergreen shrubs, within the planting. So it's a fairly conventional, you can see that fairly conventional soil there. And in that soil, it's got sufficient clay particles to hold onto nutrients and hold onto moisture to make that rain garden more drought resilient, holding onto those nutrients so those plants can grow. You will get then all the invertebrates will colonize that, the biofilm of bacteria, protozoa, yeast, fungi that live in soils and have this symbiotic relationship with plants and their roots. They all live in there. The plants themselves will grow new roots each year, and some of them will die back and create macropores through the soil. Those earthworms and invertebrates will come up and take that organic matter, the leaves that fall off, the mulch that we might add every year or so, pull that down into the soil and keep the soil open as a living system that retains its hydraulic conductivity because of the engineers within the soil. It's a kind of engineering ecosystem, which is fantastic. So if we do get silt layers accumulating within that top sort of soil layer, as those earthworms and beetles are pulling that vegetation down through the soil, they're breaking open that sort of blinding that any silt accumulation might deliver. So yeah, soils, and then we then design the appropriate planting for the type of soil that we're putting in. So Greater Green was a particular type of planting for a very particular type of substrate. Here, this is more conventional landscape planting with a more conventional soil. And then finally, not quite finally, but in terms of the sort of design considerations, getting the basics right, here we've got an overflow. So we can see this overflow is raised up above the soil level. So quite often we see overflows as flat gratings, almost level with the soil or just above. And that doesn't give then sufficient space and volume to catch that water as it comes off the road and store it over the soil. So we want a depth of water to be able to accumulate before it overflows and bypasses the system back to the sewer. So you can see that upstand there. Critically, it's got a dome on it. So we typically will use a domed overflow. Sometimes we might use a grating, but on a 1 in 3 or a 1 in 2 slope. So we never put overflows flat because all it takes is 1 shopping bag, 1 bin bag, or even a leaf fall to block a horizontal overflow. A domed overflow or an angled overflow, as water level rises, it pushes, too much like a trash screen on water courses, it pushes debris up the grating and allows water to escape. So yeah, higher than the soil, a little bit below the highway, so it doesn't flood the highway, it goes down the pipe first. And in this case, actually, because quite often rain gardens might be, well, different sizes compared to their catchment, it's very difficult to design in that that you're controlling flow via the soil. It can be done, but also I can pretty much guarantee that whatever hydraulic conductivity the soil sample in the lab came back on its certificate, that's not what you'll get when it's delivered to site. You won't get the same hydraulic conductivity as in the lab report. It will be different on day one when it's installed. It will be different a year later. And some manufacturers of bioretention soils say to expect the hydraulic conductivity of their sand-based bioretention soils to halve every year, which is very significant. And if you're putting in really free draining soils, then actually, depending on the size of your rain garden, it could have very limiting or very minimal impact on controlling the flow. Perforated pipes have literally zero flow control functionality. If water's getting through the soil quickly in a relatively large rain garden area, you might actually be delivering very little hydraulic benefits for your investment. So by putting on incorporating a flow control, which we do on our schemes, it means we can guarantee that the water can only get through, for example, a 10mm orifice hidden in this drum here with an integrated overflow. And it means that we know that when it rains, we will definitely restrict flows down to 0.1 litre per second. And we will definitely use the full volume within that rain garden. We can kind of guarantee that by adding a flow control as well as the overflow. And then finally, the idea of it not just being for Christmas, we put it in, it looks good, hopefully, day one, and then we need to look after it. There's no point putting this infrastructure in if we don't then care for it. There's a number of reasons for that. A, the functionality, even if you're just looking at hydraulic functionality, that might deteriorate over time if we're not managing the silt. If we don't look after it properly and we get lots of weed growth in there and litter accumulates, then that just attracts bad behavior. There's lots of research around, as soon as something starts deteriorating, the public start taking less care of it. They throw more litter in it, they vandalize it. So we need to keep nurturing them. We need to keep them looking good so that we've got the positive public perception for future schemes. We need that local community to keep enjoying it, to keep getting the benefits from it. If they do, then they will be onto the council if the maintenance starts getting a bit slack, and it helps keep them maintained. That helps keep all the functionalities that we're looking for from them. Don't be tempted to look for free community maintenance of SUDS. It's great if that's available, but as we roll this out, that goodwill will not stretch to the ambition that we should be having for the rollout of blue-green infrastructure. This project in White City, Bridget Joyce Square, is a really interesting example where we brokered a sort of deal between the council and Community Garden Association. They are paid by the council to maintain Bridget Joyce Square. They're local, they use local volunteers as well as corporate volunteers. They were cheaper than the council's term contractor. They're more highly skilled, they're responsive, it's part of their community, so they look after it. Helps it be nurtured and feel like it belongs to the local community. And it's been so successful that actually they've planted and they maintain these bioretention rain gardens that we also delivered within the wider estate, and a number of other schemes that the council have done now. That charity, the Community Garden Association, that does lots of amazing work with the kids in the local neighborhood. They now get some of their funding through doing basic council maintenance more effectively and more affordably than the term contractors. So, there are other models available, but we do need to look after these things for the long term to keep that functionality that we invested in the first place. It'd be much better to build half as many rain gardens, but make sure we look after them properly. We will probably get more hydraulic functionality and more benefits out of them if we build less, build them properly, and maintain them properly into the long term. Bit of a whistle stop, probably went over. Sorry about that.